Alright, let's take it from the top. After Emily's confession about Ava's connection with Ryan, everything around the house felt off. Like that moment right before a thunderstorm, where you can just feel the static in the air and you know the storm is about to hit, but for now, everything is just eerily quiet. Living with Emily was like walking on eggshells. Not just for me, but for Ava too. And Ryan. He just sat there, like an annoying piece of furniture you can't get rid of. Still, Lily seemed to like him, and for her sake, I kept my cool. Ava and I, we were doing okay. We were partners, in every sense of the word. Business was booming, and despite the chaos, our personal life was surprisingly stable. But every now and then, I'd catch her looking at Ryan, and I couldn't help but wonder, was there something going on? Or was I just being paranoid? One day, an old acquaintance showed up. Bob, my mentor from my early days. An old grizzled fox with a keen eye for trouble. You know, the kind of guy who, if he was a superhero, his power would be impeccable timing for awkward situations. He walked into the house, and I swear, it was like a grenade of unease exploded. "Jake," Bob greeted me with his half-usual smirk. "Your house is starting to look like a full season of, Real Housewives. How you holding up?" "Bob," I responded, trying to keep my irritation in check. "What brings you to my humble abode?" Bob had a way of getting under my skin. His timely appearance wasn't exactly a relief, but his perspective, no matter how blunt, was often a mirror of reality that I didn't want to face. Over a cup of coffee that morning, I found myself sharing my twisted family saga, from Emily's betrayal with Ryan to Ava's mysterious connection to him. Bob listened, that knowing smile never ever leaving his face. "So you got your ex, her lover who's also your brother, your current partner who's your brother's former therapist, and a kid all under one roof," Bob summarized, trying to suppress his laugh. "You sure know how to pick 'em, Jake." He was right. Despite everything, we were together. An unconventional, dysfunctional family, but a family nonetheless. Well, as Ava says, this is just the beginning, and somehow, I believe her. As the days blurred together, I found myself reluctantly growing used to our strange living arrangement. Emily tried to keep her distance, floating through the house like a ghost, while Ryan was like a puppy, eager to play his part in Lily's life. Ava was my rock. Steady, solid, always there. One day, while Ava and I were discussing business, Bob dropped a bombshell on us. He explained that he'd been keeping an eye on an old rival of ours, a guy named Marcus. Apparently, Marcus was out of prison, and he had sworn revenge against us. That's the thing with the past. It's like an annoying fly that refuses to leave you alone. "Marcus is out?" Ava asked, her voice steady. "And he's after us?" Bob nodded his face, unusually serious. "He's got a bone to pick, mainly with you two. But Jake, with your family here, they could be targets as well." Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, Marcus had to resurface. I remembered him from my early days in the business, a ruthless guy who'd do anything to get ahead. He was bad news, and the thought of him being anywhere near Lily, I couldn't let that happen. I wanted to keep this from Emily and Ryan, at least for a while. They had enough on their plate. But Ava, she's not just my partner in business, she's my partner in life. Bob, in his usual style, added a bit of humor to lighten the mood. "You've got a love triangle, a vengeful ex-con, a kid, and a business. Sounds like the perfect plot for a reality show." Perfect plot for a reality TV show. I shook my head. "Bob, sometimes I think you're enjoying this way too much." "Well, it sure beats retirement," Bob shot back with a grin, reminding me again no matter how bad things got, there was always room for a little bit of humor. We were sitting on the porch one day, with Lily playing on the grass, when Ava told me, "There's something you need to know, Jake," she said, her eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting to see a ghost from her past. "You know my days as a therapist, but I've been implicated in a crime before that. A high-profile crime. I was young and naive, and I trusted the wrong person." The words poured out of her in a torrent, her usually controlled demeanor giving way to raw, unfiltered emotion. Suddenly, Bob's warning about Marcus took on a whole new dangerous dimension. It wasn't just business. This was personal, and that made it a whole lot scarier. "Marcus is not just a rival, Jake. He's much more than that," Ava admitted. "We have history, a bitter one." "Ava, why didn't you tell me before?" I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. I wanted to protect you, Jake, but now I think it's time you knew everything. Marcus, the high-profile crime, Ava's hidden past. It was a lot to take in on top of everything else going on. The horizon looked a whole lot darker now, but as Ava took my hand and Lily ran to us, giggling and oblivious, I knew we would face this storm together. I leaned back, pulling Ava close. Well, you were right, I said with a sigh. This really is just the beginning. One day the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there he was, the infamous Marcus. The man was tall, with an aura of power and danger. He looked around the house, his gaze calculated and predatory. "Good afternoon, Jake," he said, his voice dripping with a kind of honeyed malice. "I believe you've heard of me. I'm here to discuss a mutual acquaintance." Marcus's mere presence in our house was unnerving. Ava was tense, Ryan looked wary, and Emily looked like she was about to faint. Even Lily seemed to pick up on the tension, her laughter suddenly quiet. "Marcus," Ava acknowledged, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "To what do we owe the displeasure?" He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Straight to the point, huh? I like that. I heard about your family enterprise. Thought I might have a stake in it." "What makes you think we'd ever let you be a part of this?" I snapped, my temper flaring. The audacity of the man was astounding. Marcus just smiled, that sickly sweet smile never leaving his face. "Because, dear Jake," he said, producing an envelope from his jacket, "I've got something Ava here would want, and all I ask for is a small share." The envelope contained leverage. What it was, Ava didn't say, but I could see it in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also determination. Marcus had just upped the stakes, but he didn't know who he was dealing with. "I won't let you do this, Marcus," Ava spat out, her usual calm exterior breaking for a moment. "Well, we'll have to see about that, won't we?" he replied, leaving us with an ominous promise of a storm on the horizon. The day ended with all of us sitting in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The tension in the air was palpable, but under it all, there was a sense of unity, a silent vow. We were in this together, come hell or high water. As we sat there, I looked at Ava, her face hard as she gazed at the horizon. "What's our next move?" I asked. She turned to me, her eyes full of determination. "We fight." While we were battling our own demons, Emily was waging a war of her own. She decided to dig into Ava's past, to find out what Marcus held over her head. She had enlisted the help of an old friend, Lisa, who had just happened to be a cop. Emily spent hours huddled with Lisa over coffee, scanning old files and debating theories. They were quite a sight. Emily, usually so soft-spoken, passionately arguing her point, and Lisa, who had that hardened look of someone who'd seen too much. One evening, over dinner, Emily finally broke the news to us. "I've been investigating Marcus," she started. The room went silent. "And Ava," she added, looking at Ava apologetically. "And?" I asked, holding my breath. "And," she said, "I think we can use what we found to fight him." A wave of relief washed over me. Emily and Lisa's discovery could change everything. Ava looked at Emily, a strange mix of anger, surprise, and gratitude in her eyes. Late at night, as we huddled in the living room, I noticed Emily's wary yet determined eyes. "Emily, you've done more than enough." She looked at me, a tired smile on her lips. "No, Jake, barely begun." With Emily and Lisa on the case, the veil on Ava's past was starting to lift. And the more we learned, the stronger we became. Because in the end, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about standing together, no matter what. Ryan was as affected by the threat as the rest of us, but he'd taken it more personally. It was late when he started finally sharing his plan. He decided to take Marcus head on. No more hiding, no more running. He wanted to dig up dirt on Marcus, enough to force him into a corner. "Ryan, that's insane!" Emily had exclaimed. "You'll be walking right into the lion's den!" But Ryan was adamant. "It's time we stop playing defense," he said, his determination burning bright. So he left, just like that. He walked out the front door and into the unknown. When he returned, he was a different man. The cocky grin was gone, replaced by a look of grim satisfaction. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, but his spirit remained unbroken. He held up a small encrypted device. "Evidence," he announced, his voice rough from exhaustion. He'd infiltrated Marcus's headquarters, hacked into his confidential files, and stolen crucial data that could expose Marcus's illicit activities. It was a dangerous, reckless move, one that put him right in the crosshairs of Marcus's wrath. but it was also brave. He'd risked everything for the sake of the family. But then I wondered if Ryan had more to win from his bravery. I noticed at first the way he looked at Ava. It was subtle, just a lingering glance here, a gentle touch there. I tried to dismiss it, to convince myself that I was reading too much into it, but as the days passed, it became harder to ignore. One evening, we were all gathered in the living room. Ava was at the whiteboard, outlining our plan for the days ahead, a fierce determination in her eyes. Ryan was watching her intently, and there was something in his gaze that set my teeth on edge. I decided to confront him one day, hoping to catch him off guard. We were in the garage, working on a contraption that was part of this audacious plan. He was elbow deep in engine grease, his shirt sleeves rolled up, completely engrossed in his work. "Ryan," I began, my voice steady, "I need to talk to you about Ava." He looked up, surprise flashing in his eyes before he quickly composed himself. "What about Ava?" I fixed him with a steady gaze. "I see the way you look at her, the way you talk to her." Ryan laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "And how's that, Jake?" I felt my jaw tighten. "Like you're more than just friends." His laughter died down, replaced by an icy silence. "Jake," he finally said, his voice low and steady, "you're seeing ghosts." "Am I? Or are you just up to your old tricks?" Ryan looked at me, his eyes hard. "I'm not the same person I was back then, Jake." "Prove it," I said, holding his gaze.